can I ask you to, if you're not already joining us on social media, we'd love to see you on the Actus UK Instagram accounts, on our Twitter accounts, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever takes your fancy, we'd love to see you on there. And it's a great opportunity to find out all about kind of more of the events that we're running, like we are with SAP today. So loads of things that you can get involved with on there. If you aren't able to join us on social media, we'd love you to be part of the Enactus UK network. Hopefully you're already part of the network, you're already one of our Enactus students, but if you're not, it would be fantastic to have you part of an Enactus society. We work with over 66 universities in the UK, so hopefully there is an Enactus society at your university. However, if there isn't, even more reason to head and join the website, because we can help you to get one started. So, and being part of the Enactus program gives you access to exclusive opportunities with SAP, just like the one today. So I know you're not here to listen to me, so I'll try and keep this short and sweet. But just a quick plug for the Enactus UK programme. So it doesn't really say what it is on the tin, but we are the UK's leading combined youth social action and youth social enterprise charity, which develops thousands of young entrepreneurial spirits every year. So what that means in practice is we aim to be the bridge between the world of work and the world of higher education. So we really try and allow students to develop the skills that you're going to need in your graduate career, and the way that we do that is supporting you through creating student-led projects which benefit your local community. So these projects address one of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we really hope that by helping these projects to develop, that they can become their own social enterprises in their own right. And I would encourage you after this talk to head to the Enactus UK YouTube channel and check out a couple of the projects that you can get involved with, because there's so many things that I could spend hours telling you about. We don't have time for today, but there's lots of ways that you can really benefit your local community or international community, working with other students who share the similar passions with you, and get involved. We always say that Enactus students join because of three reasons: to make new friends with like-minded individuals, to make a difference to their local community, but also to build on their employability skills and CV, which is exactly what we're going to do today with SAP. So even if you've joined for one of those reasons, we think that you'll leave having got all three. And you can see what Enactus stands for on there. But I will stop screen sharing now, because I know that you are not here to listen to me from Enactus UK, but you're here to listen to Lindsay from SAP. So I'll stop sharing and allow Lindsay to get started with the session. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Caroline. And I'm going to share some slides shortly for you as well, after we've done our introduction. But as much as Caroline said, you're not here to hear about Enactus, it's well worth us saying that as an employer, when we're looking at individuals and we get thousands, and I mean thousands and thousands of CVs through to us, we have to look at what differentiates somebody, and we're going to talk about this, about how to set yourself apart. And it's, you know, it's a tough market, whether you're coming on to do placements or graduate roles. Of course, many of you, you know, by joining today, you're at university and you're studying, but then what else are you doing? So we know what those pressures are, but one of the things that really stands out to SAP and a lot of employers that partner with Enactus is we know that individuals that work in those groups there's something about them where they've got that entrepreneurial spirit. So for certain role types, it's actually really, really attractive. So if you are already involved with Enactus groups, then great. But if not, really, really do encourage you to take a look at it, because it's very hard to differentiate your CV, especially if you haven't got work experience or volunteer experience, all of these things. And we'll come on to some of those things today. So definitely, when Caroline shares all this stuff, follow them on Instagram, because it's they do some really amazing things. So today, I'm going to share something slightly different to potentially some of the other sessions that you might have had with employers. And it's really to look at personalities, strengths, and other traits that employers look at. So by way of introduction, my name's Lindsay Rowe. I head up our strategic programs and purpose. at SAP, and this is across what we do for internships, apprenticeships and early talent hiring. But also I have a split role, so one focuses around that, the other is around what we do in purpose and sustainability, and then also our sort of organisational structure and our kind of sales performance. So it's a very, very mixed environment, but it means that we know exactly where the business is looking to hire talent, and especially young talent coming in their kind of undergraduate and graduate roles. So I'm also joined by Max Wilson, who I'll introduce you to a little bit later in the presentation. He's on placement with SAP this year in my team, because I want him to give you a bit of a flavour of his own experiences of applying for placements and applying to get into the world of tech and what that experience was like. So feel free to ask questions as we go. You've got the chat function, so you're more than welcome to ask questions there. Or if there's something really pressing, come off audio, anything like that. I'm you know, free and easy for some of this stuff. And there will be some QR codes to some of the stuff we're covering today. So I'm going to come off video just while I present, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions as well. So let me just share my screen to begin with. And there's going to be a video to begin with. So let me just make sure I get the sound as well for you. So hopefully some of you already know who SAP are, and that's what's attracted you to today's session. And for others, it may be, I've never heard of SAP, I'd like to know what they do, or you've just got an interest in the world of technology. So we will share a short video about who we are, and we'll go from there. So hopefully, and I'll ask Caroline to confirm that you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Great, and then we'll go for hopefully the video. So might take a second or two. Here we go. And let me know if you're getting sound. The sound?
Yeah,
well?
we've got it.
What is SAP? SAP is the market leader in enterprise application software, helping companies of all sizes and in all industries run at their best. 77% of the world's transaction revenue touches an SAP system. Founded in 1972, the company pioneered enterprise resource planning software, known as ERP, setting the global standard on how to manage operations and helping organizations do more with less. Since then, we've grown from a small 5-person startup to a multinational enterprise, with more than 100,000 employees and over 440,000 customers in 180 countries. SAP is in the business of helping companies become intelligent enterprises. By connecting experience with operations and advancing breakthrough technologies like machine learning, Internet of Things, and advanced analytics. We're driven by innovation and are now the #1 cloud business software company in the world, fulfilling our utmost purpose to help the world run better and improve people's lives.
Okay, so that's SAP in a nutshell. So, as I said, I wanted to talk today specifically around skills, and some of this data, there has been a refresh of it quite recently from ISE, but the sentiment of it is still super relevant of what we actually see as employers when looking specifically at talent coming into our business. So when we talk about skills, a study that was done by the Institute of Student Employers was to look at what employers say graduates lack in the when hiring. So if I can get those of you that are online to pop into the chat and share what skills you think employers feel are lacking in graduates as they come in. And I'm just going to take a look at that chat function. So some are coming through already. So yeah, pop into the chat. Anything that you think is missing, or employers think is missing from graduates as they come out into the market. So we've already got some answers coming in, which is great. So honesty, initiative, adaptability, being open to learn new things, realistic expectations. That's a great one, Sava. We'll cover that specifically. Communication and flexibility, humility, practical experience, yeah, negotiation skills. So what's really interesting is the variety, a good understanding of business, yeah, the variety of things that you're all sharing here, like loads of, you know, different answers. And I will share what the results actually were. But what's super interesting as part of this is talking about things like negotiation skills or business understanding and commercial awareness. That's the beauty. So if any of you are in kind of your first or second year and you're deciding whether you'll do a placement year or do internships, those sorts of things, they're absolutely invaluable, and they can be more valuable than secondary education, as in going into kind of master's stages as well, in terms of securing your first graduate role. Masters are super important parts of your learning, but for people that are looking to purely secure that first graduate role, often the business and working experience that you can get from an internship or a placement can make you stand out from the crowd. Realistic expectations is one that Sava shared, and this is it's something all employers are really grappling with. We as a society, we're used to immediate stuff now. We don't have to wait for anything. You know, Amazon Prime will deliver it same day, Deliveroo will get you your dinner, and all of these other areas where we just don't have to wait for anything anymore. And those same expectations through going through school, university, and into employment are all part of it. There's also a huge competitive angle, people comparing themselves on social media, or that person's just got a job and this person's just been promoted. There's a lot of pressure for young people in that space, and it's getting that balance of realistic expectations around it. So some great answers in there. I am going to share the results of the survey that was done. Now, interesting, you'll see here, and we'll zoom into some of this, but I would say going back around 10 years ago, we would have seen these bottom skills being the worry, you know, IT and digital skills, numeracy, and Excel skills or data handling. But a lot of that's gone as a skill gap now, because it's built into a lot of the education curriculum, and naturally, you know, millennials and Gen Z are much more digital native, so that doesn't tend to be the skills gap. Dressing appropriately, we're pretty much there, but occasionally someone will surprise you. And equally, employers are starting to figure out how they change and modernize. So, you know, you don't have the full suit and tie anymore in most industries. Some you still do, but depending on the company, you see quite a big gap. SAP is certainly on that journey, starting to see trainers coming in and those types of things. But I think the important part here is looking at the top ones that are identified as gaps. So I'll just zoom in here for you. Resilience is the top one. So being able to come into an organization, and I think some people talked about kind of adaptability and those sorts of things, but having, I guess part of this is also the emotional resilience, and it also talks about emotional intelligence. It's quite a big change when you transition from school into university and then into employment, and having that resilience to go through that path. And so employers really look to how do we help build that when you join the organisation. And then managing up's a really weird one, and it's a real balance to get. But what people are employers and managers are looking for is an individual that can actually start to predict where support might be needed, and feel comfortable to manage up with their team. Often people think that's right, just get really pushy with my boss and tell them how it is and those sorts of things. But really what we mean by that managing up is getting that right balance of where you're adding value, but you feel comfortable to ask the questions and to push things forward. I always think leadership's a really interesting one, and I'm almost disappointed that a lot of employers say that this is a lacking skill in their graduates, because you need to build out this skill usually once you've started in employment. But again, back to Caroline talking about Enactus, building out leadership skills isn't always about, you have to be a leader or a manager. You may find by working on an Enactus team or doing, you're probably building leadership skills in your uni teams when you're working on a particular project, or you might be building them up in your retail job, in your part-time. There's always ways that you can build them up. But I would say for me, it's that resilience, commercial awareness and self-awareness that's, we particularly look for. There's a skill that isn't mentioned within that survey, but one that we are seeing becoming an increasing need in the tech industry, and that's the skill of storytelling. Because people don't sell in the way that they used to, and people don't present quite in the way they used to. People want to engage with stories. If you think about even the stuff that you will look at on Instagram or TikTok or any social media platform, everything's actually leading you towards engaging with something because of the story that it tells. So having that ability to do that is a skill that we really look for, especially for those going into sales or pre-sales, or those that need to kind of train on complex topics. Because technology is complex, but once you build the story around it, technology is actually very, very simple to understand. So that's definitely a skill that we look for in individuals, or we look to develop when people are with us on placement. So I mentioned that we're looking at things slightly different for the session today. So I am going to just go to the chat quickly, just to see if any questions have come in before I move on. But are there any questions before we start talking about personal brand and your brand and how you stand out to employers? No, perfect. So as I say, you can put anything in the chat as we go, and we'll save some time at the end as well. So your brand is really important way once you join a business of how you develop. But it can sound a little bit cheesy when you think about personal brand, and you just think, oh, it just makes, for some people it just makes you feel a bit ick, like, oh, personal brand, it's just so cheesy. But really what we mean by it is how you see yourself and how others see you is actually what builds out your personal brand. And we're going to talk about some tools and techniques and things you can research and do for free out on the internet. This isn't SAP content. This is just things that you can use, free platforms, to start to build an understanding of yourself and equally how others may see you. So what makes up that brand in how you view yourself and others do? There's 4 core areas to that. One are your core values as an individual, your personality traits, the skills and strengths that you've developed to date, and your own vision. And again, some of this, you think your vision's a little bit cheesy. It's not all about you need a 5-year or 10-year plan, quite the opposite. But it's just, how you position yourself and how you think. And you're probably thinking about all of these things all the time, but maybe you're not taking the time to step back and reflect on yourself in that way. So when we talk about core values, what's important to you? And this is going to really matter when you select the types of companies you even want to apply to work for. Because as much as you want to position yourself as an important talent that they want to hire, you also want to work for a company that meets your values, that you're behind what they do and how they operate. So it's what's important to you. You can't imagine your life without them, and it's the motivation behind why you do what you do every day and how you operate. When we look at personality traits, a lot of this you might be aware of, but these are the qualities and characteristics that really define you as a person, and your attitudes and behaviours around it. And as I mentioned, the strengths and skills are things that you will have learned and developed over the years, and things that you can continue to learn, develop and enhance. And again, placements, internships are great ways of doing that. I've seen, you know, Max, who's joining us today, he's been with us just 3 months, this month actually, so he's just coming up to the end of his first 3 months. And the strengths and skills he's been able to further harness and develop from when we first interviewed him and hired him are just immense. You just think 3 months is no time at all for that to have happened. And then identifying your vision, you know, who you want to be now and in the future, where you see yourself professionally, how you'll use your own skills and values, and what keeps you going. You know, what makes you wake up in the morning in some respects, but also, you know, what motivates you. For some people, that could be financial. It's not for everybody, or it's a combination of things. Some people that go into our sales parts of our business are very money motivated, and actually we want them to be money motivated because that's why we know they'll hit the tough targets that we give them and those sorts of things. So it's not a bad thing to be money motivated. But we also see people that go into money motivated roles who aren't actually motivated by money, and they struggle in that area because it's not really what they're about. Yes, they'd like a comfortable life, but actually they need more. They want to be able to develop, or they want to be involved in purpose-led initiatives. Some people want to work in public sector or the third sector versus the private sector. So there's loads of things for you to sort of consider when you're looking at employers to work with. So exploring your strengths and personality traits. So we're going to go back to the chat function on Zoom. So have any of you already started to explore your own strengths, your personality traits and values? Have you done an online test? Have you done sessions through uni? Anything like that? Pop in the chat anything that you've done. If you know something about, you know, that, or just there's a bit of your personality that you know, if someone had to describe you in one word, that would be the word, even if you haven't done sort of assessments in this space. So if you pop those into the chat, we have had a question. So whilst those answers are coming in, I'll answer that question. So we've had a question from Bilal about things like Coursera certifications, and are they specifically useful in showcasing those skills? I think anything that you do to stand out has got to be useful. Now, some things, I wouldn't say you need to invest in anything. There's so many platforms like Coursera, like Forage, that allow you to access things for free. So as part of that, in terms of kind of learning those skills, it demonstrates to an employer that you've been thinking about it, you've been thinking that you need to develop them. But equally, you need to balance how much time you do on that versus your studies, and maybe you've got part-time employment, those sorts of things. But they definitely help, especially as you build out your CV, if you've done things, especially if they're relevant to that industry. So we've got some people have shared that they've got good management skills, they've done some self-evaluation around that, and good leadership skills. Empathy, I mean, Sophia, that's an amazing trait to have, because trust me, we see lots of people that don't have that when they come into the workplace, and it's so important as part of it. So yeah, empathy is certainly, it's a skill and a personality trait that is very important, especially for people that want to explore eventually going into leadership and going into working with customers, for example. You have to have a good empathy to be able to work with people. So thanks for those that have shared. So I'm going to share now, and these are some using a platform called Crystal Knows. Now, this is not a SAP platform, anything like that. It's just a free platform out there. And you can access some of the assessments on there are free. I think some may be chargeable as well. But the reason I wanted to share when I did these assessments was how all of these things start to connect together. So if you look here, on that top, actually, I'm going to go back so that it's easier to see just on one screen. So when I did this particular assessment, it looks at individuals. So you'll have people in certain roles that kind of what we describe as like captains and drivers, you know, in the almost, they colour these schemes sometimes like in terms of red. And then you've got people that are the planners, the stabilizers. So when the people that are driving forward are potentially coming up with the ideas, you need people that can actually execute and implement them. You've got then things like questioners and skeptics and analysts. Now, the word skeptic for a lot of people, it sounds like a negative word, but you need a dose of skepticism in business across your teams. You want a really diverse team. And when we talk about diversity, we don't just mean diversity in terms of cultural diversity or gender diversity or all the many, many forms of diversity that there are. Just diversity of kind of how you operate and think is really, really important to us. So we need a good dose of skepticism. Otherwise, we'd just be all dreamers and just thinking everything's possible. But we also need influencers and people that can get everyone else to come along the journey. And we need people that are more supporters or harmonizers. So when I did this assessment with my team, a lot of us were sitting in this kind of green and blue area, which was great because I thought, well, we all get on really well. But actually, I needed more people in the other areas to start challenging some of that. And if I look at the senior leadership team at SAP as an example, got a lot of senior leaders that are in that captain driver mode. There needs to be some of us that are on the team where we look at, okay, how, as I say, how do we execute and drive these topics forward? But then there's other pieces. So you've got personality tests, which I'll come on to, and then what your values and strengths are. So for me, when we talk about values, you know, number one there, loyalty to family. It's got a little picture of a dog. It really should be a cat if it's looking at me. But, you know, ultimately, that's what's most important. The reason I do everything that I do is focused around my family and my concern for others. So, you know, even right now, I'm like worrying about you guys, like, oh, I hope we can get you all jobs in the industry and help you through your kind of final years at university. But of course, to do all of that, I do want to achieve stuff and I want to be responsible and take responsibility for what I do. And I love the scientific side of things. So I'm really into the analysis and tech and numbers and that sort of thing. But it's good to have an understanding of these values because you don't always think about it. So I really enjoy doing some of these tests. But then the strength, so you start to see some links around, you know, for me, fairness is super, super important, making sure that there's justice in how we operate and that everyone's got fair opportunity, whether you've been to university or haven't been to university, whatever your background is, you could go and work for any company purely based on your merit and your skills is really important. There's other things though, like the 16 personality test, and I'm going to come on to this on the next slide. I'd recommend doing it on a different platform, not on Crystal Knows, just because the other platform, 16 personalities, again, it's free, but it gives you a really nice report and something to reflect on and take a look at. So, I'll send you a link to 16 personalities. When you look at some of those areas, again, it summarizes some of the stuff and you can start to think, is this representative of me? Are there trends in doing these different assessments? So we do lots of these assessments internally. We don't do it for hiring purposes. We do it once people join the business to allow them to reflect and see where their strengths are. So any questions before I move on to the next stage of a platform that you can use to, again, this is for anyone that's interested in the psychology side of it. We will talk about getting to know yourself. So any questions? Just having a look at the chat here. So lots of people have actually shared that they've got skills in, let's have a look here, specifically in S/4HANA and Fiori and Internet of Things. So again, these are great skills to have. All of our kind of, if you're at the stage of looking at graduate roles, I really recommend that you look at not just SAP's website for roles, but it's mainly our partners that hire heavily in that space. So you can go on the SAP website, go and find our partners, because they recruit very heavily in that space as well. So if you don't see roles. Great question. What type of personality are we looking for? Any personality. We're not looking, that's back to that kind of self-awareness. We want every personality type. We would, if everyone was sat in one particular type, we just wouldn't be able to move things forward. So I think for us, I'd want to see in my team, if I had a big enough team, I'd want to see every type of personality, because that's what drives forward innovation. It helps us drive forward, the proper inclusion in our teams. So do I recommend sharing these personality traits with recruiters? It really depends. I wouldn't upfront. I certainly wouldn't put it in kind of like CVs and things like that, purely because every employer is different. This is looking at kind of how SAP approach some of these things. I'd say there's nuggets of it that you can bring out in a conversation. So a lot of the time, if you get through to a kind of telephone interview, being able to demonstrate that you've reflected and that you understand these things, but it's not something, as I say, that you put in like a cover letter or a CV or anything like that. Again, a lot of it's about getting to know yourself and how you drive forward in that space. So just coming forward on the slides. So for any of you that have heard of the Jhari Window, so anyone that studied psychology, you may be aware of this. And again, there's a free platform out there where you can test some of this stuff out. It was actually devised by some psychologists back in the 50s now, Joseph Luff and Harrington Ingham, if anyone's particularly interested. But it was the concept that there's 4 aspects to us as individuals. Our open self, so information about you that both you know and others know, so a bit back to that personal brand we talked about. There's the blind self, so information about you that you don't really know, you don't see in yourself, but others do. So you'll often find others see skills and traits in you that you don't always spot. The hidden self is things that you really think are a skill or a trait or something about you that others don't quite see and you don't necessarily demonstrate. And then there's the unknown self. There's things about you that don't really apply, or nobody else sees in you, you don't really see in yourself. So this little exercise that you can do, I will share the links at the end. And I tried it myself as well. You select 6 words about you. So all of these ones you can see here on screen. Now it's a really weird coloured platform. You can definitely tell it's a free platform in terms of the look and feel, but the output's pretty cool. So you choose the 6 words that most relate to you, but then you get other people that know you. Maybe it's people you work with really closely at university, maybe it's friends and family, to also do the same. And it starts to build out a picture of you, what's open, known to you, what things you might need to develop. So I did this exercise and I'm happy to share kind of the results with you. I think, are they there? No, they haven't come up. I can share them with you if anyone's particularly interested. But what the Jhari Window then did was show me where other people saw the same traits, but it also allowed me to see where there was stuff that I just really wasn't aware of. And the good thing was, on the whole, how people saw me and how I saw myself, there wasn't big differences there. But if you started to spot differences, it allows you to talk to the individual about some of those, what is it that you demonstrate that makes them think that? So around that. So is it about being adaptable or spontaneous and those sorts of things? And none of those words are negative words or positive words particularly. They are just words, and they just allow people to think when talking about individuals. So I mentioned previously about why I'd recommend this particular platform for doing the 16 personalities. Again, this is something by Myers-Briggs. It's well used out in a lot of industries to understand your own personality type, but it's quite a cool end report that you get. And you get to then start to see other groups of people where you might work well with them. So you can see there, for me, it was this turbulent advocate. There's 16 personality types. The link's there, and we'll share this with Caroline afterwards, so she can post these links out to you. But it's certainly worth having a look at if this is of interest. So that's around the kind of skill side of things, and we're going to come on to Max in a second, just to share his own experience of applying to work for SAP. You saw the video at the start, but the scale of SAP, often people don't quite realise how big we are. So we've got 100,000 employees worldwide and over 440,000 customers. And the reason being is that most of the technology that we work on is B2B, so business to business, whereas things like Microsoft or Google, some of the other tech players that you'll be aware of, you will have experienced their stuff because you're actively using it. You'll use Microsoft in school, perhaps. You'll be using Google or another Explorer and search engine on a regular basis. But behind the technology and what we drive for our customers, of those customers, all the ice cream, 64% of the world's ice cream is produced by them, the world's pet food, the athletic footwear. So we're the organisation behind powering a lot of the systems that those companies work with across all the multiple industries as well. So we every year hire between kind of 50 and 60 placement students. They come to us on a 13-month program. So if you are a first or second year student, students right now, we've opened our registry of interest, and the official applications start from October. So we hire across all business areas, not just technical roles. This is a really crucial bit to know about getting into the world of technology. You don't need to be a coder. You don't need to be really deep in a technical degree. You could be studying absolutely anything at any university, and you'll have skills that we want at SAP. So we've got roles across human resources, legal, sales, media, creative, and you'll find that in lots of employers that you look at. So don't be afraid of technology if you're not studying a technology discipline. We're very proud of our placement program. We're the #1 placement program in technology in the UK, and #8 across all employers for undergraduates. And what we see is our undergraduates, our placement students, often get then rehired as their graduate roles when they leave when they leave university and they come back to us. But overall, on Glassdoor and all of the other areas, we're in the top 10 for most of the awards, employer awards out there. That picture there is one of our interns. We're super proud of him. He won Intern of the Year 2 years ago, and we did make him walk that check all around London after the event. So just some tips as well around employers once you start getting to things like interviews and assessment centres. Biggest tip that we can give is being yourself. You're not going to be able, you might be able to fake it through one interview or one assessment centre, but it will be really hard once you get the job to continue that. And people want the true you. So things that you think, oh, I don't want to share or I'm going to hide, that's not what employers are looking for. They really want the authentic you. So really make sure through your interviews that you can demonstrate the real you. But also thinking about collaboration. One of the things we look for on an assessment centre is not just how you perform, but how do you work in a team. So if you go onto a team task as part of an assessment centre, really consider who are you in the room Are you being particularly dominant? Are you speaking over all of the other candidates? Because that's the sort of thing where we think, okay, this person's exceptional, but they're not going to work well in the team because they're not listening or giving time to the others. So really consider, if you're doing assessment centres, are you collaborating? Are you giving fair opportunity to everyone? So you don't want to necessarily be the loudest in the room and the person that's you know, like on, I don't know, like you'd see on the Dragon's Den or Apprentice type style. Think about collaboration on doing that. So CVs and cover letters, we get lots of questions about this. Make sure your cover letter is personalised to the organisation, really, really crucial. I know it's hard, you'll probably apply to a lot of companies, but you know, when we get one saying, you know, you really want to get into the world of finance and investment banking, it's quite difficult for a tech firm when we know that you're just applying to all different companies. CV templates, you can go out onto websites like Canva and get good templates as well. So if you want some ways of formatting it, and there's some, you know, even if you look at employers' websites, one of our partners, PwC, one of the big players in this space, they've got a great careers site, really, really good, some really good content there around building out your cover letters and CVs. The other thing to think about as well is your video interviews. More and more companies through the pandemic have moved to a video-based system. So just practice with friends, get on, I don't know whether it's FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, start to build that confidence up on being on video, and do it more and more regularly, and it will feel more normal. I hope for a lot of you through the pandemic, you've probably had to do it for your studies, but really, really focus on feeling comfortable in front of video. So when we look at a placement, if you were to join SAP, a big part of it is learning our roadmap, the enablement that we can offer, and also connecting with a cohort of other young people that are starting out on their career paths. We focus as well on making sure you don't just learn about SAP, but you learn about business, so that you're really well equipped when you come out as a graduate. And we really focus on that team experience as well during a placement at SAP. There's lots of other things as well, so buddy schemes, opportunities to get involved in CSR, big community. Max was out canoeing this weekend. I came down to see him down in Reading. He was canoeing. He came second by 2 seconds, but they did an exceptional piece for raising money for our CSR. So there's loads of other things that you get beyond just, and you'll find this with lots of employers, you know, of course, I'm talking about SAP, but really look at this stuff when you're looking at companies. Are they offering more than just the job and the salary? What type of schemes do they have in place? So our roles are live now for expressing interest on Rate My Placement's website. But of course, if you're a graduate or about to graduate, I really recommend looking at our careers site, but also in particular, our partner careers sites. So looking at the big four like PwC, Accenture, Deloitte and EY, but also on our website, you'll see a list of all of our partners, and we've got tens of thousands of them where they recruit heavily for SAP skills. So if you are in that graduate space. There are some links here, and again, we'll share this with Caroline so that she can share it with you. But I do want to come to Max now, so not just to talk about his canoeing prowess. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we will get to questions as well. So Max, I hope you're still with us.
I'm here, Lindsay, I'm here.
Oh, perfect, thank you. So you're on placement with us, and you joined us 3 months ago. But did you want to just give a bit of an introduction to what you're studying at uni, what role you're doing for SAP, and also, well, do that first, and then I'll ask you some other questions.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so nice to meet you, everyone. My name's Max, as Lindsay said. I joined the team about 3 and a bit months ago now. It's flown by. As I say, I'm doing business management at university. I wasn't totally sure whether I was going to do a placement at first. So if there's any of you out there who are still thinking, you know, I don't know whether it's the right thing to do, I don't know how it will benefit me, I was in those same shoes. I wasn't even contemplating it at first until I spoke to a few of the careers, the employability fairs, and did things like this, what you're all doing now. And I started to understand how much it would bolster my CV, how good it would be for my employability, and the skills I would gain and the opportunities I would get by doing it.
Perfect, thanks, Max. And it's interesting you say, because Max really genuinely didn't know that he wanted to do placement. He didn't know what industry or kind of what role type. And that's what made him really stand out for me, because I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That's exactly what a placement year is about. He hasn't got any fixed mindset around what he wants to do. So that means we can hopefully, fingers crossed, he's only 3 months in and he's not going to say any different on the call, but hopefully we can then give him that experience so he can see, oh, this is the stuff I like, this stuff I don't like. He might come away and think, I hate the world of technology and business. But that's also okay, because at least he then knows where he wants to take his graduate career. I had an intern years ago, he wanted to get into comedy, because actually being in business, he realised this isn't for me. And he's doing a bit of comedy now. So I think he has to do some business just so that he can pay his fuel to the comedy houses. So what was it like, Max? How many companies did you have to apply to?
Oh, well, I applied to a lot. I'll say that. I don't know whether it's best to say that on here in front of you, Lindsay, but I certainly did apply for a lot. I knew that there was going to be rejections, and the careers people and the employability people that I spoke to as well said, if you want a placement, you're going to have to be prepared for the rejections. And it's true, you do get rejected. And certainly if you don't know what area of business you want to go into, like myself, you do end up applying for a lot of different roles, a lot of different areas of business. And you've got to be prepared that there are going to be setbacks. I mean, I think I applied for about 30 in the end. Still to this day, haven't heard back from half of those, which you know isn't great, but it's just the way it is. I was lucky that I got the opportunity at SAP, and here I am, thankfully.
Yeah, and I think I'm so glad that you shared that it was 30 and you got rejected and you didn't even hear from some. You know, if you do hear from them, don't go there now, right? But I think when for the students that are on today, it's so important to hear that, because I don't want any of you, you know, it's a bit of a numbers game for some of it, and you have to apply to different companies, and you will get rejected, and you won't hear from lots of companies, and it can feel really, really hard, especially if you start to see your friends getting roles and those sorts of things. But genuinely, it's well worth the experience, and as you go through it, it will help. If you think about that skill right at the start, what we're looking for is resilience. If you can kind of get through that, that's resilience in itself. I mean, we really pride ourselves on being able to give that feedback. You know, bringing people, and even when you haven't got it, it's a horrible call to make, but it is important to the individual as part of it. So you will apply to lots of companies, whether it's for internships, placements, graduate roles. So do brace yourself for it. It can be a challenge. Equally, you might start to get multiple offers, and that in itself is just as much of a challenge, trying to figure out which company do I go for, and those sorts of things. So since you've been on placement, Max, and I know, as I mentioned, you've developed loads of skills, like your confidence has really come out and all of those things, but what would you say has been your kind of takeaway thing from 3 months in?
100% to be myself. You said that from minute one when you hired me. You said that, you know, the interns that stand out are the ones that are themselves, and you said that on this call just a moment ago. So, you know, I've taken that with me ever since the start, just to be myself, to not pretend like I know anything. There's tons of stuff which I get asked to do which I'm not too sure how to do, but it's like you say, Lindsay, it's better to be honest about it. To be resilient, as you said, to be determined, to know that you're not going to understand things the first time, to know that you're not potentially going to get them right the first time, and just to keep going, to know that you're not expected to understand everything. That's what SAP is great for, particularly. They understand that you are coming in as an intern and you're not going to know everything immediately. And just to have confidence in my own ability to really sort of push forward and believe in myself. I came in lacking a little bit of self-confidence. I think it's safe to say that. And these first 3 months have definitely given me an opportunity to be myself, to express myself, and to try and do what I do best.
Yeah, and for those of you, the other thing that's really a challenge when people join a business, especially if they're doing an internship or placement, is you're classically replacing someone else, and you're seeing that person 13 months, 12 months in, whatever it might be, and so you're thinking, oh, I've got to be like that person. It's like, no, because they've had the 12, 13 months. Like if you compared yourselves on day one, and I know that was a big thing for you, Max, as well, and just now I think you've totally clocked, like, oh, I get it, like I'm not going to be that person, and actually I'll have totally different skills and all the different things, and that's what we've certainly seen in you since you've been on placement. So thank you for sharing that, Max. I think it's super important for people to know what it's really like. So I think we've got a few minutes, and we can overrun from my perspective, but obviously if anyone needs to leave, that's cool too, to get to your questions. You can come onto chat, you can come onto video, you can come onto audio, whatever it might be. I'm going to have a look. I'm sure some stuff has come through. Let's just have a look. Oh, I think loads of questions have come in, so let me just read this. So yeah, so we touched on the kind of ideal candidate stuff. It really is, there is no specific personality type or ideal candidate. It's people being them and just being well-rounded in their approach. We don't fast track applications for Enactus members, just to ensure fairness and inclusion for all of our teams. Of course, being part of Enactus, we know that there's skills there that are really valuable. So when people review CVs, but we don't have a fast track for that. We don't have, so timeline for graduate scheme applications. So we don't have a formal graduate scheme. We have a formal undergraduate scheme, so an intern program. So the opening window for that is October up until the end of December. And we do our assessment centres in January and February. For graduate roles, as I say, a lot of those graduate roles are with SAP or our partner ecosystem, and you apply per role basically. So they're just on our careers site, and we don't do like a rotational graduate program. Let's just have a look. So we've got a question here. I've worked in B2B for 12 years across 4 industries and 5 years in senior commercial roles. Does outside experience come in handy for recruiters in the UK? So I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but if you're thinking in terms of, is outside experience, as in experience in other companies, still valuable to SAP? Yeah, absolutely. So obviously today we've been talking mainly about kind of graduates coming out for their first roles, but our careers site covers all role types and across all industries and different areas that we focus on. Without having the placement year, you do need, so a question there, can you apply to do the placement in 3rd year? No, it does need to be, if you're doing a degree course where you need to do a placement, it's a full-time placement, so you need to be in your 2nd year for that. Do we accept creative CVs with standard colours or outstanding things? That's a really, that's a great question actually, because depending on the industry you go into, it can really vary. So you could create a super creative CV, and then as you go on the application portal, they only accept a Word document, or they only accept a PDF or whatever. I would go relatively neutral and standard with colours, just because you just don't know what an employer what their preferences might be. If you're going into a really creative job and you're going, I don't know, to work for a graphic design company, then it's very, very different. And into, you know, we had people send us a website and you examined it as if you were going through Alice in Wonderland, and that was how you did their CV, which was cool. But obviously it just didn't work to upload it. So then they had to go for a standard one.
Sorry, I'm going to jump the gun. Sorry, Lindsay. Thank you for answering my question. I just want to know one more thing. Can we also include CV, picture on our CV, or no picture at all?
I'd recommend no. And if you Google about it, it's again, it's one that's hotly debated. If you put your LinkedIn profile in, that's the best way to do it. So a link to your LinkedIn, your photos on there, and those sorts of things. But on the whole, most people don't recommend putting photos in CVs.
Okay, thank you so much.
Question. So nice to meet you as well. So what other questions have we got? I've got experience of 12 years, 9 of which are SAP functional. Do you recommend the graduate scheme? So again, we don't have a graduate scheme. So if you've got 12 years experience and 9 years of SAP functional, then I would be saying just look for specific experience jobs in that market. So whether it's on our careers site or our partners. As I say, if it's functional SAP skills, it's the predominant roles are within our partners. Let's have a look here. So would you say that SAP would engage with a little less experienced candidate who checks the right boxes and is willing to further educate? Again, it really depends on the role type and experience. So internships, obviously, and placements are great because no one's got any experience at that level. But obviously, if you're later on in your career it's just about matching up to the sort of job spec and requirements of that particular hiring manager. We don't currently sponsor visas for international students for our placement roles. In terms of virtual internships, we don't offer virtual internships in the UK at the moment. So obviously people are having to work from home and those sorts of things, but we don't have just a pure virtual that you can access remotely. But there are ones being launched on our US site that you can take a look at. And also if you go to, I can't remember if it's on the links, let me just double check. It's not, so I'm going to put it in here. If you go to OpenSAP, I think it's opensap.com, you can access a lot of our courses for free on there as well. But yeah, we don't have a virtual internship in the UK. So I think that's all the questions that have come in. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think that's them all. So handing back to you, Caroline.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lindsay and Max. It's been a really insightful session, and thank you so much for answering all of those questions. I know there's been a lot in the chat, and it's been really useful to gain such a great insight into SAP, and hopefully we've inspired a lot of students to go away and learn a little bit more about themselves. I've recently just joined Enactus, well, a new starter at Enactus with me, and we've just done the 16 personalities test, so I would definitely recommend it. I think it changes something like 6 times in your working career, which is great. So it's great to do now, and then maybe in 5 years you two can see if you've changed based on your skills and your development.